So back when all this broke, the media kind of had a field day with it. And since then, there have been three kind of independent inquiries to it, or investigations into not just that quote, but all the quotes that came out of the whole ClimateGate situation. And so the first one came out February 3rd, and this one just concerned Michael Mann. This investigation was from Penn State, so they were only concerned with Michael Mann because he was the only scientist at Penn State that was involved. And one of their findings, or one of their conclusions, is there exists no credible evidence that Dr. Mann had or has ever engaged in or participated in, directly or indirectly, any actions with an intent to suppress or falsify data. More recently, the UK House of Commons had an inquiry published, the Science and Technology Committee, and among their conclusions, they say, critics of CRU have suggested that Professor Jones's use of the word hide the decline is evidence that he was part of a conspiracy to hide evidence that did not fit his view that recent global warming is predominantly caused by human activity. That he has published papers, including a paper in Nature, dealing with this aspect of the science, clearly refutes this allegation. In our view, it was shorthand for the practice of discarding data known to be erroneous. Another conclusion, even if the data from CRU used were not publicly available, which they mostly are, or the methods not published, which they have been, its published research results would still be credible. The results from CRU agree with those drawn from other international data sets. In other words, the analyses have been repeated and conclusions have been verified. The most recent inquiry was just released a couple days ago, and this was a panel set up by the University of East Anglia to look at kind of the science behind the emails. And one of their conclusions is, we saw no evidence of any deliberate scientific malpractice in any of the work of the Climate Research Unit, and had it been there, we believe that it likely would have been detected. So moving on quickly to kind of an IPCC error that's been discovered and gotten a lot of attention recently. But first, a quick background on the IPCC. The IPCC is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. It was established in 1988 by the World Meteorological Organization and the United Nations Environment Program. It has a full-time staff of only 10 people that work at the World Meteorological Organization. It does not carry out original research, but rather it relies on thousands of scientists who volunteer their time to assess research on many aspects of the Earth's climate. Its main purpose is to publish assessment reports every 5 to 7 years that are divided into three classes, and I have the most recent assessment report here. It's almost 3,000 pages long, and it's divided into three sections or books. Working Group 1 deals with the physical science basis behind climate change. Working Group 2 deals with impacts and adaptation and vulnerability, and Working Group 3 deals with mitigation of climate change. So on page 492 of the Working Group 2 document, there's basically one sentence that is erroneous. And this has kind of been blown up into this huge controversy. It even got its own name, Glaciergate. So it's talking about glaciers in the Himalayan mountains, and it says the likelihood of them disappearing by the year 2035 and perhaps sooner is very high. And that's wrong. They're not expecting glaciers in the Himalayas to be disappearing by 2035. And one of the problems is that they cite a World Wildlife Fund report, which is, the World Wildlife Fund is like an advocacy group, and so it's not really, a reliable source, and so they shouldn't be citing sources that may be, biased in some way or another, and they should kind of stick to the hard peer-reviewed science. And so this has been kind of hyped up into a big finding, because people have kind of been saying that this was one of the IPCC's key findings, and so if this is wrong, then everything must be wrong. But it's just not true that it was a key finding. This this one sentence was not reproduced in the Working Group 1 report, where there's actually a 45-page assessment on glaciers and ice, and is not reproduced in the synthesis report, which kind of takes all the reports and puts them into one summary. And it was not reproduced in the summary for policymakers, which is just a shorter summary. So the only real error here was that the Working Group 2 author that wrote that sentence should have read the 45-page assessment in the Working Group 1 section and relied on that instead of going off of this kind of unreliable World Wildlife Fund source. So quickly, what is meant when the word consensus is used in climate change? This is, I didn't compile this list. These are all hyperlinks to the official policy statements of various scientific organizations, their policy statements regarding climate change. And this is not even an exhaustive list. I've seen a lot more, policy statements from other organizations as well. But they all kind of say the same thing. And this is one from the American Association for the Advancement of Science. It says, the scientific evidence is clear. Global climate change caused by human activity is occurring now and is a growing threat to society. This one is from the American Geophysical Union. Many components of the climate system are now changing at rates and in patterns that are not natural and are best explained by human activity. And here's one from American Meteorological Society. Human activities have become a major source of environmental change. Of great urgency are the climate consequences of increasing atmospheric abundance of greenhouse gases. So that's not to say that there aren't uncertainties. Of course, in science or in anything there are uncertainties, and especially when you're talking about a science that's trying to predict the future. So I just kind of brainstormed a bunch of uncertainties that are involved, and it should be noted that they're there, but basically the point is, because we don't know everything, it doesn't mean we know nothing. And despite these uncertainties, the evidence is enough so that this kind of consensus has developed. And so with that, I'll say thank you and kind of have a discussion on some of this stuff.